Hi, my name is Xavier Leleu. I'm a professor of hematology in Poitiers in France. And I've been trying to work a lot on the concept of dose density, dose intensity with carfilzomib. And I was very happy when, of course, Amgen proposed that I would co-authors with very important people this abstract we have submitted to ASCO 2020 entitled Efficacy and Safety of carfilzomib, dexamethasone, and daratumumab, KdD, twice weekly 56 versus once weekly 70 in relapse refractory setting, which is a cross-study comparison of two studies, CANDOR, the 56 twice weekly part, and MMY1001 ECHELUS study, which is once weekly 70 part. This abstract is on behalf of a series of co-authors and was accepted as a poster at ASCO 2020. So to put things into context, you know that there are various aspects of the relapse setting with multiple myeloma that has evolved recently. Number one, that the fact that we have a situation that we need to face when we propose and provide patients with treatment in the early setting of multiple myeloma, early relapse setting of multiple myeloma, which is that we use more and more lenalidomide up front as a maintenance post-transplant or continuous treatment in non-transplantable patients. And therefore, we have an extremely rapidly growing number of patients that are len refractory at the time of reaching the second line. The issue with that is that then any Rev combination, Dara Rev Dex, carfilzomib Rev Dex, etc., ixazomib, lenalidomide, dexamethasone, is hardly available to patient len refractory at the time of early relapse. Therefore, there has been a series of efforts, very important registration studies rapidly conducted with the objective to try to develop other combinations, non-lenalidomide containing, lenalidomide sparing, with the objective to put forward drugs that the patient would have not had upfront, could receive naive from in the relapse setting, but len non-refractory. And among these combinations, anti-CD38 naive immunotherapy, daratumumab or isatuximab, and carfilzomib dexamethasone. We know immunotherapy is pretty well tolerated, and we know now we have learned how to use and to manage carfilzomib and dexamethasone in the early relapse setting. So CANDOR was daratumumab, carfilzomib, dexamethasone. Now, the other thing, which is another aspect of the introduction of this abstract, was that there's another thing very important with carfilzomib, what I believe unique of carfilzomib, which is a great concept, scientific concept developed Garrett Morgan quite a number of years ago, which was that with carfilzomib we have something very interesting, is that you can replace, and data accumulate to prove that you can replace those what we call density, multiple infusions within a cycle, 1, 2, 8, 9, 15, 19, or 15, 16. You can replace this with an increased dose, but less infusions within the cycles. And for example, here, CANDOR, 56 twice weekly, 1, 2, 8, 9, 15, 16 out of 28-day cycle. You can try to replace this, and that is exactly the scientific question we ask here in this abstract, by once weekly, 1, 8, 15 only, but at 70 milligram per meter square. And so, because there has never been head-to-head comparison, phase 3 randomized or phase 2 randomized study, 56 twice weekly versus 70 once weekly, we have performed a very stringent statistical analysis, cross-study comparison of the two studies. I'm not gonna go through in details of the statistical method. It's a bit specific. What I just like to say here, and I'm going to read the sentence to be ultra honest because I'm not a specialist in the question. We have run a propensity scoring model on a various of pre-specified variables. There is an adjusted endpoint analysis we defined an inverse probability of treatment weighting, and based on this, we can try to compare optimally the two studies. This test was run only for efficacy. For safety, we have in the poster provided a simple head-to-head comparison of two studies, no specific stat analysis. However, for efficacy, we've run the specific test. Now, CANDOR was an all-comer study. MMY 1001 was a len-bortezomib exposed, most of the patient len refractory study. Therefore, we picked from CANDOR that specific population that matched MMY 1001. So for MMY 1001, we have the 85 patients. For CANDOR, we only have the population that matched this analysis. And so it's not the entire 185 population, it's the 89.3 number of patients that had this specific characteristic. So what we have found, and it's something extremely key for the patients and key for the family, the nurse practitioners and the physicians that use carfilzomib worldwide, is that you can easily replace 56 twice weekly by 70 once weekly in that carfilzomib, dexamethasone, daratumumab combination with an equally effective regimen, and the data clearly support this, not only for the response rate, but also for the survival aspects, and particularly the median PFS. Then the next question, if I was a patient or a physician looking into this data, would be, and so what about the safety profile? Because maybe increasing from 56, although twice weekly, to 70, even though it's only once weekly, but maybe this simple increase in drug serum level concentration would create some issue in terms of safety profile. And so we have reported in the poster the safety profile of CANDOR and ECHELUS MMY 1001 study. And I'd like to remind to everyone, globally, to start with, and a second aspect and second point, secondary, more specifically cardiac issues, which we know can be encountered with carfilzomib. Globally, the safety profile was very manageable. But I know all physicians say that. So more in details, grade greater or not 3, 84.3% and 82.4% in the two studies, CANDOR and ECHELUS. So I would say that it's quite similar. If we go more in details to some aspect of the safety profile, which I particularly think is of importance, I think that the number of AEs is not necessarily what speaks more, as much as grade 3 and 4 should be avoided. But what's more important is how many patients discontinued or had to stop the treatment because of an AE. Because an AE is really a problem. What is the consequence is that you stop the treatment. So if you look at the AEs leading to discontinuation of carfilzomib, for example, which is what we are looking at in here, 21.1 for CANDOR 56, and 18.8 for ECHELUS 70. So you can see here that the safety profile for certain way of seeing the adverse event report is very superimposable. If we look at fatal adverse events, unfortunately, some adverse events induce death of the patient. 10.8 for CANDOR, 3.5 for ECHELUS. So again, we have here a clear and obvious demonstration that the safety profile of ECHELUS was not worse just because the patient had to increase the dose of carfilzomib. Now, if we look at cardiac events, cardiac failure, hypertension, we go from 1.1 to 2.4 in the two studies. And for hypertension, 18.4 to 20%. All of the data I've provided are in percentages. So I think the conclusion of the study are globally that I think we have here another demonstration that carfilzomib is a unique extremely interesting drug with a pretty positive safety profile regarding neurotoxicity, a pretty positive safety profile regarding GI toxicity. Therefore, you can play with the dose, you can change the dose and adapt the dose to a given patient needs with carfilzomib that we were not able to do with bortezomib in the past and ninlaro ixazomib as well. So I think something unique of carfilzomib is that you can say to a patient that only wants to come to hospital once a week for improving quality of life, that it's feasible, it's manageable, it's safe, and the efficacy will be similar to a regimen with carfilzomib given twice a week. And I think now that study is one more study to demonstrate this. And in that regard, I think it's extremely important to the patient, extremely important to the family, extremely important to the concept of improving the quality of life of the patients. And I would conclude here that there is one more aspect of what I believe is very important with that drug, but that is something that our poster didn't speak about, but other paper will soon speak about, is that because now you can certainly give carfilzomib on a weekly basis with a clear-cut improved quality of life, safety profile, similar activity, we can expect that you are going to be able to give carfilzomib for a much prolonged time, therefore possibly until progression, and therefore you potentially we are going to improve the efficacy of carfilzomib because given once a week. And there is a series of studies, and I speak about IKEMA, that are going to certainly, hopefully, demonstrate that giving carfilzomib until progression might really improve the efficacy of the drug and not deteriorating the safety profile. So IKEMA was on 56 twice a week, but more studies will come on a weekly basis on top of that. RO2, for example, KrefDex twice a week versus KrefDex once a week, I believe, given until progression, should also be able to demonstrate this. So with this, I'll thank you very much, and I hope you will shift your practice from twice a week carfilzomib to once a week carfilzomib, and appreciate the real benefit in that change in practice. Thank you very much for your attention.